So this is a video showing how to adjust the valves, and we start by removing the spark plug from the cylinder, and I'll show you why we do this a little later. And then remove the rocker cover, and that's two 10mm nuts, and they're diagonally opposite each other, 10mm. And then there's the central nut, which is 13mm, and then you can take the valve cover off. Just be careful of the gasket, and that exposes the valve train underneath. So here we have the two valve covers off, and the spark plugs are out, and the little cap is off, leaving the window exposed. Sorry, it's very hard to expose a shot in there. And the bike is in 5th gear, so we can bump the engine over by turning the wheel. And as you bump the engine over, you'll have to take my word that TDC is displayed in that window at the moment. And so it tells me that we're at TDC, but we don't know which cylinder is at TDC on the compression stroke. So to find that out, the way I do it is observe the valve train. So on this left-hand cylinder, as I rock the engine back and forth around TDC, there's no movement of the valve train. And on the other cylinder, you can see as we rock the engine back and forth, the valves are opening and closing. And that tells me that the right-hand cylinder is at TDC on the exhaust stroke, and the left-hand cylinder is at TDC on the compression stroke. And so this is the cylinder that we're going to adjust the valve clearances on first. And another technique you can do to check that you're at TDC on the compression stroke is occlude the spark plug hole with your thumb, and then just rock the engine up to the TDC mark, and you'll feel the pressure building up under your thumb, and you can almost let it out with a little hiss. I haven't been able to demonstrate that, but you feel it. That tells you that the valves are closed and compression is being built up in the combustion chamber, and it confirms that this left side cylinder is at TDC on the compression stroke and ready for the valve train clearances to be adjusted. So the next thing to do is to start working on the valve clearances. There's another thing you can check when you're doing this job. So this movement of the rocker arm is the clearance, and it's actually this clearance in between the rocker arm and the valve stem that we're adjusting. And I've got it backed off a lot here to show that concept, but it should be a lot tighter than that. The other thing you can check while doing this job is the play in the rocker arm between these two posts, which are actually the cylinder studs. There should really be almost no up and down movement of the rocker arm, and just this one here is a little bit loose. I can feel it clicking up and down, and I can actually make a little noise, whereas this one, I can just see a tiny drop of oil being squeezed out, but I can't really feel the movement, but it's still at zero friction, and that's what you want. This one is probably a little too loose, and you can hear it there. That'll lead to more valve clutter and worse noise. So before setting the rocker clearances, I usually try and correct that. What you need to do is back off your valve rocker arm bolts a little using a 15mm socket. And then you want to really squeeze these two blocks together as tight as you can, really tight, and re-torque these. And I've taken that play out. So there's a number of different ways of doing that. Some people put a clamp on it and really get it very tight, and then kind of hit it with a hammer on the end of the pivot just to loosen it a fraction. You don't want it to be so tight that you feel like it's catching, but you don't really want to feel play up and down in this direction. And I find if I do it by squeezing the blocks together hard with my fingers, I don't think you can overdo it, but you usually get it to the right tightness. And you just want to make sure afterwards, after you've adjusted the play in the rocker arm, that you re-torque these valve studs back to the specified torque. And you usually do that in a crossways pattern. And for this bike, that is, I usually set these to about 35 Newton meters, but you do it in stages. So I'm just going up to 25 here. And this is something you want to do with a little bit of kind of finesse. You don't want to strip the studs, so you just come up to your specified torque gradually like that. So the next thing to do is adjust the valve clearances. So basically this outside nut is the lock nut, and then the inside nut against the push rod is the adjuster. And so how it works is, I've loosened this already so I can move the adjuster. If you tighten or move the adjuster in towards the rocker arm, the gap gets bigger. And if you move the adjuster out, the gap gets smaller. And it's sort of hard to explain, but you'll work it out pretty quickly. So this is the intake cylinder, and this is a 0.01 millimeter leaf gauge. And so you just put it under there, tighten that down until it's pretty snug, and there it's probably a little too tight because I can't really pull it out. So what I do then is I get it to kind of ballpark by adjusting the adjuster just until you want it sort of a little bit of friction but easily movable. I prefer to err just on the side of too tight than too loose for these. You get it where you think it's right. I do that by hand, and then you put your two, so you use one 12-inch spanner to hold the adjuster just right, and you've got to hold it really still, and then you use the other one to re-tighten the lock nut. And it's a little bit of trial and error. You can see that I loosened it and we fell out, and so you just keep sort of going with this until you get pretty good. Maybe have that a fraction tighter. And as you tighten the lock nut, you'll feel the adjuster move a little bit. And that's good. That's sort of where you want it. That's just gripping just, and then you tighten this. That's sort of probably where you want it. Free moving, but just hanging in there. And that's the kind of amount of movement you're looking for. When you think you've got it right, you can really tighten down that adjuster. There is a specified torque for this, but I think just about 20 Newton meters or hand tight will do it. So yeah, you just repeat the process on the other side, and you can see I've just skipped a bit there, but I've got that just right on that side. And I've torqued these all to spec, and so now you can turn the engine over using the same technique, bumping the engine with the wheel until you get the other cylinder at TDC on the compression stroke. And basically it's 360 degrees. You wait for OT to come through again in the window, and then look, check it the same way. So this side should then have the valves opening and closing, because this side will be at TDC on the exhaust stroke and the other side will be at TDC on the compression stroke. Valves will be closed, no valve train movement. Adjust the valve clearances and the rocker arm play if necessary on the other side, and then put everything back together. Put the valve covers on with new gaskets if you're using them, torque everything to spec, put the spark plugs back in, torque them to spec, and that's this job done. I hope that helps some people.